Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters Podcast. My name is Kris. I am your always frequent host, and it's getting close to the season. It really is. All the football is almost back. We've got the Championship back in England. I think the Dutch League is underway. Ligue1 is underway. It's all getting underway. And as of course, we would always like to think on this football podcast, we're going to do some predictions and preview shows to get you nicely ready for the new season. And tonight, I have got a special guest with me, which I will introduce in a moment, because this evening we are going to preview the French season ahead, and it is this season's Ligue 1. And I am happy to say that friend of the show, I'm going to call you friend of the show from now on, Rich. It's Rich Allen who's back with us again this evening. So thank you very much for joining me, Rich.
No, my pleasure.
We've got lots to get through, mate. So we're just going to kind of crack on and plough our way through what we've got ahead. So the Ligue 1 season starts the same weekend of the Premier League, so the 14th of August. 13th and 14th. I think the first game's actually on the 12th, if I'm not mistaken, but that weekend. So let's. I'm going to actually start kind of back to front with this pod, because everyone's going to tune in for the old PSG stuff. But I want to focus on the teams that have just come up to start with, because a lot of people will have no idea about any of them. So we have got looking at the season ahead. You got Nancy. We have got. Oh goodness me. Looking at the lineup again, Nancy and Dijon. Let's start with those two as a package. In fact, what do you make of both of those sort of teams ahead of the season? Have they got enough, do you think, to stay in the league this season? Because they're two sides that have got quite a lot to adjust to. I think it's fair to say, if they are going to survive.
Absolutely. Unlike in recent seasons where we've seen teams come down and come back up again relatively quickly, it's been quite a few seasons since both of these were in. I think Nancy, you're looking at 3, maybe 4 seasons ago since they were in the top flight. I think it's going to be very, very tough for them this season. There's the usual teams that you would expect to be down there, aside from the teams that have come up, seem to have strengthened in some way. So I think both these sides are going to find it very, very tricky. Nancy perhaps are a little more suited, maybe on the basis of a couple of young players who they can sort of call upon to provide them that sort of no fear, if you like. There's the attitude that they can bring to the side may just give them the edge, but I think all three, to be perfectly honest, are going to be struggling. But I think Nancy and Dijon too, that will struggle slightly more than Metz, I think.
Yeah, you touched on Metz. They are the third of the triumvirate coming up from Ligue 2. I've kept them separate because you know somebody who follows Metz quite well, don't you? So what's his view? And maybe you can introduce him if you like, because he's a part of the FFW crew.
He is, yeah. Now, Jeremy Smith is a big Metz fan for his sins. Speaking to him actually about this season, he seems a little more confident than they were season before last. They were in Ligue 1 and they had a pretty torrid time. They've made some pretty shrewd signings actually over the summer so far. You're looking at the likes of Mevlut Erding, experienced striker, been around, the likes of PSG, Rennes, stint in Germany as well. So he's been brought in. You're looking at the likes of Renaud Kohad, another experienced midfielder from Saint-Etienne, and an absolute corker of a signing in Yann Jouffre, signed on a free from Lorient. So they've really boosted their side. They've had some really good players. So yeah, I think of the three sides that have come up, they certainly stand the best chance of staying up. They will still find it tough because although they brought in Erding, he's not a prolific goal scorer. So goals will have to be sourced from elsewhere as well. And as we've seen countless times, you score goals, your chances of staying up are certainly improved. So it's by no means going to be easy for them. But of the three that have come up, I would expect them to put up the strongest challenge.
The nicest kit as well. I get the Mick taken out me on this podcast all the time because the first thing I always say is, "Well, they got nice kit," so I'm going to go with that. With regard to business, just briefly, you touched on a couple of signings there. Of the three promoted sides, who, in your opinion, has done the best business?
I would probably say Metz. They've added the key thing of Ligue1 experience. I mean, Nancy have lost a couple of players. They've managed to they sort of had I touched upon it on a previous podcast with you guys. Actually, they had quite a good core of really young players. Remy Walter went last January to Nice. I've forgotten his name. Arnaud Lusamba has also followed suit to Nice as well. So they've lost those two. They still have kept hold of Clément Lenglet, really young, very, very good young centre-back. And quite importantly, I think, going forwards, they've kept hold of Iben Asser, really young, exciting attacking player. Although they sold him to Monaco, they've managed to keep him on loan this season. So it's semi-good business for Nancy in so much as they've managed to keep those two. But no, Metz have definitely done the best business. That Ligue 1 experience with those three that I previously mentioned will be absolutely key, I think.
Yeah, we shall see how the new boys get on. But looking sort of more into teams that people might be more familiar with, again, we'll kind of start away from the bottom and work our way up from last season. A couple of sides that struggled towards the back end of the season. Start with Toulouse first of all. Who obviously performed that great escape. They've lost Wissam Ben Yedder, which I think we kind of both knew would happen.
Oh yeah.
What do you make of their prospects heading into this season? Is it going to be much sort of more of the same, or do you think they're going to be slightly revitalised given that great escape?
It's going to be tough for them. They obviously performed so well towards the end of last season, but let's not forget just how badly they performed the first half of the season. It only took that change of manager to sort of click things over. Now, whether Duprat can carry that into the new season remains to be seen. The loss of Ben Yedder is massive. The amount of goals that he has scored over the last 3-4 seasons for them has been ridiculous when you compare it to their total goals scored. They've lost him. They've lost. He wasn't necessarily playing as frequently, but they've lost Etienne Dido, who brought a wealth of experience. Marcel Tisserand has gone back to Monaco. Then he had him on loan. He was another player that really, really improved under Duprat. They have in turn got Isiaga Silla back from Gazalec Ajaccio, really good young defender. Will be exciting to see how he can play alongside Issa Diop, who is certainly one of those young defenders to keep an eye out on. I think I actually read the other day that Zidane was a big fan of his. So that's a really good young defender to keep an eye out on. As a sort of Ben Yedder replacement, they brought in Ola Toivonen. I know him quite well from his time at Rennes, although spent a large part of last season on loan with Sunderland to not a great deal of success. Toivonen could actually, in all honesty, he could turn out to be a very, very good signing for Toulouse. It was evident towards the end of his time with Rennes that he just was not looked upon as a key member of the side, was not picked, and eventually then was sent out on loan. So if Duprat can bring him into the side, make him feel as though he's a key component of the attack, central figure, he's got experience. He scored goals when he joined. He obviously had a couple of very good seasons in Holland with PSV. Joined Rennes immediately. Went on a bit of a scoring spree with Rennes. then it then did dry up. But we know he can score goals. He scored goals in this division. So I think it's going to be very, very key to Toulouse's survival, how well Toivonen can rediscover that form under Duprat.
Yeah, it's a player I always kind of liked, but never really seemed to I don't know, something about him never quite stepped up. But as you say, he could be vital. Let's have another look at a team that sort of provided the great escape, Guingamp. In fact, we'll lump. We'll do Guingamp on their own actually, because they're an interesting case, because they obviously not a big name, not a glamorous side, but just staying in the division, that's an achievement for them. Full stop, isn't it? And would that be much the same this season again?
It is. I think the big thing for Guingamp this season is how they'll now cope. Obviously, they don't have Gourvenec in charge anymore. He moved to Bordeaux in the summer. That's a huge loss for Guingamp. You know, he's been part of that, bringing up that side from really the doldrums. Brought them into the top flight, has kept them in the top flight, got them a Coupe de France win. So to lose him is a really, really significant blow. Saying that, they brought in Antoine Kombouaré, so he's a coach who has, again, plenty of experience. He joined from Lens, but he was in charge of PSG. He was sort of the last sort of pre-QSI manager. He was dumped out in favour of Ancelotti. So, you know, he's got experience. He's got experience in the top flight, which is exactly what they need. It's really just a case, you know, there's not a great deal. You know, they've added a few players, but you know, there's still no real big major standout player. Couple of really good young players, but they've added experience. They've brought in Etienne Didot from Toulouse. Luca Do was brought in from Ghent, who was obviously previously at Nantes. So with the likes of them to go alongside your Jimmy Brions, your Sloan Privats, you know, you've got plenty of experience there. Key players, I think, to actually look out for them this season are two young players who had, certainly one had a very, very good summer. So you've got Marcus Coco, who's been in and around the French under-21 side for a few months. And then you've got Ludovic Blas, very, very exciting wide attacking player, who was a key part in the under-19 side that won the European Championships this summer. Actually scored in the final as well. Full of skills, full of confidence. If they can get him involved, get him with some decent amount of game time, he could be key for them in terms of providing service for the likes of Briand and Privat up front. It's going to be a tough season. It always is for Guingamp. There's no getting around it, and Guingamp fans themselves will openly admit they're not an attractive side to watch, but they will do what they do best: fight for every point and just try and cling on to their league and survival. But it's not going to be an easy season, sort of post Gourvenec. No,
I would happen to agree with every word you said there. I think they're just one of those clubs that you just sort of hope for the supporters' sake, because they've got a good following, haven't they? And they always seem to
got a ridiculously good following. Famously, have like more season tickets sold than the population of the town.
Crikey, I didn't know that. See, you learn something every day on this podcast, boys and girls. Let's lump my boys Lorient in with Nantes, working our way up the table from last season. Let's start with Nantes and come back to Lorient. What do you sort of look at where they are, because they're quite a famous old name, and a lot of sort of teams will be familiar with that side of things, that, you know, as a named club. Are they, again, do you think they underachieved last year, finishing 14th?
No, to be perfectly honest, no. No, when you look at the squad, there's just so little there to get you overly excited. It's difficult to say that, you know, I can't justify saying, they underperformed, because to me they just didn't. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Rennes fan. I'm saying that because, you know, there seems to be two styles of teams in Ligue 1. You have the teams that are quite exciting to watch. So last season, obviously, you had PSG, but you also had the likes of Nice. Caen produced some really, you know, attractive attacking football at times. And then you have those teams that are sort of dogged, defensive, but effective. So, you look at the likes of Saint-Étienne, you look at the likes of Lille. None go one stage further than that, in that they are dogged and defensive, but not actually that good at it, and don't actually get the results that they need. Now, I don't know what their targets are for the season. It may be that Ligue 1 survival is more than enough for them, but you just get the feeling that with the heritage and the history that side has got, they should be aiming for more. They lost Des Zakarian at the end of the season. He moved on. And they brought in René Girard, who, yes, okay, he won the title with Montpellier, fantastic achievement, but has then gone on and done nothing. He made Montpellier a dreadful team to watch. He moved to Lille, made Lille a dreadful team to watch. So if I was a fan of Nantes, I wouldn't be feeling overly confident of a successful season. They have a few decent players. You look at the likes of... I've infamously had a bet with somebody on Twitter about Emiliano Sala, whether he'd score 10 goals or more. He didn't, thankfully. He is a good player. He is a good player, and if you can get him scoring, he got on a couple of sort of semi-scoring runs last season. If they can get him playing and scoring, that's going to be a big thing for them. They themselves then have a couple of youngsters. They've got Valentin Vongier, who looked really, really good, but then suffered quite a lengthy injury last season. They've also got quite an in-demand youngster called Amin Hamit, I believe, who played another one from the successful under-19 European Championship side. He's suddenly, after, as with so many youngsters, after one good summer in a football tournament, are suddenly in demand everywhere. And Bayern Munich and Lyon are wanting to throw 8 million euros, I think was the figure, at him. But non-president Valdemir Kita has come out and said that's out of the question. We're not going to sell unless some ludicrous offer comes in. So for somebody who I don't think has hardly played a first team game, I don't quite. I think 8 million is quite ludicrous money anyway. So what he's expecting, I'm not sure. But I've not got high hopes for Nantes this season. It's going to be another season of struggle, of not attractive football. But as they have done the last few seasons, it will probably just about be enough.
Good luck, non-fans. Enjoy that. I think one of our listeners, actually, Jenzeb, who's keen follower of the show, he's adopted Nantes as his French team. So enjoy that, Jenzeb. Enjoy that.
All the teams he could have chosen.
I know. Well, I think the reason he chose them might have something to do with the fact that I follow Lorient. I think he might have been being a little naughty there, possibly. But what do you make of Les Bleus? I mean, they've obviously brought. It's been quite a lot of ins and outs, not for a lot of money, it has to be said. Rafa Guerreiro leaving is obviously the big out. Notoriously sort of well-run club as far as the finances go. Do you foresee a mid-table comfort finish, or is it going to be a bit more of a relegation fight this season? I think they will probably just have enough. I think they will have enough, so it won't quite be a relegation dogfight. They'll probably be clear of relegation sort of around March time, I would say. But it's, I sound like I'm pessimistic for all these teams, but I think it's not going to be as bad as Nantes. I can give you that, maybe. But I don't know. The loss of Guerreiro is a big loss. They have obviously kept hold of the likes of Majid Waris. They've got Benjamin Mukanjo. Between them, they scored in excess of 20 goals, which, to be honest, in this division, if you've got two strikers who are scoring 20-plus goals, you're going to give yourself a very, very good chance of staying up. They've managed to keep hold of Walid Mesloub. He was a player who was heavily linked with a move away. Didier Ndong, who will forever now be known as the man who tore Menez's ear off. Oh, yes.
He is a good young player. So I think they've actually, for the sacrifice of losing Guerreiro, which was always going to happen, They living on borrowed time with Guerrero. He could have gone to last season before. So to have kept hold of him for as long as they did actually was not too bad. So I think they've managed to prepare for that loss because they knew it was an inevitable loss. So he's gone. We at French Football Weekly absolutely love Jan Joffre. He left as we've previously touched upon. They've got enough. They have got enough. They've added a couple of players here and there. Sylvain Marveau, who seems to just love Brittany. This is now, I think, it's his third Breton club that he's played for. After joining from Newcastle released him. So this is his third club in Brittany that he's played for. So he'll bring a bit of experience. They have enough. It'll be a sort of 13th, 14th finish. So enough, I think, for Lorient. Unless a little bit more investment comes in the side, I think that's going to be more than happy for the fans.
Yeah, I'll take it, and I love Jan Joffre as well. So shame to see him go. I don't know whether they've actually announced who the new captain will be yet, but that's a real loss, I think. But we'll also sort of say with the sort of setup at Lorient there, Makanju, you just touched on him briefly. Do you think there's any chance one of the clubs higher up might take a gamble on him before the window shuts?
I don't think so, purely on the basis that he's not previously had a particularly excellent goal scoring campaign. Last season was a bit of an anomaly, and actually when you look at the goals, it seemed like they all came in like the first third of the season. No, I think if any of the two are going to come under transfer scrutiny, it's going to be Waris. I think he offers a little bit more to other clubs. But I think they're going to be. I think both of those players are going to be safe and will be Lorient players come the end of the window.
Holding you to that. Right, let's pick on a batch of clubs altogether. Then I'm going to lump Montpellier, Angers and Bastia together. That's quite an eclectic mix. Angers 9th, Bastia 10th, and Montpellier 12th last season. Of those three clubs, who do you sort of fancy to have a fairly decent season? And who of the three, if any of them, do you sort of fear for a little bit business-wise, what they've done, what they haven't done?
I've been a big fan, actually, of a couple of Bastia moves this transfer window so far. They've lost Francois Camineau, who had a very good season actually last season for them, but was one of a number of players who was quite partial to a sending off or two. So he's a loss. They recoup. I can't remember how much they got for him. 1 and a bit million, I think, for him. Floyd Aite bought a few goals. He's obviously moved to Fulham. Julian Palmieri, who was very good in defence, but also offered something going forward down the left-hand side, moved to Lille. And then Brandao, the sort of enigmatic Brandao, he of the Thiago Motta headbutt, was released. So there's experience they've lost there. And in Camino as well, a bit of youthful, we perhaps call youthful exuberance, but they have recruited reasonably well in terms of attack. Bastia are one of those that we mentioned before, those sort of defensively minded sides. They have that at the Furiani, quite an intimidating atmosphere at home. Fans really get behind the team, but then get on the backs of the opponents, which really helps. And it just adds that sort of rock solid fighting mentality, which sometimes sort of spills over into numerous red cards that they had last season. But they brought in Thierry Bifuma from Espanyol. He's previously been, he's had a spell last season with Reims. Two then that I'm really looking forward to actually seeing get some solid games under their belt. You've got Enzo Crivelli from Bordeaux. He's a young, though he wouldn't, not to look at it because he looks about 30 odd, but really big, really big built striker, quite an imposing presence, but pretty nimble as well. He brings a lot of movement to his game. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they can fit him into the side. And then Lenny Nongis, who's more of a wide man, He moved from Caen to Lille last season, I believe. Didn't really get a good run in the side at Lille, partly because early part of the season there were so many managerial changes that wouldn't have helped him. But he never really got a chance. So they've signed him on loan as well, which I think was probably part of the Palmieri deal going the other way. So they've added a couple of youngsters there who I think can give them a bit more of a direct attacking presence. So I've been quite impressed with what they've done. They sort of quietly go about their business. They always seem to be in a little bit of financial trouble here and there, but they've done relatively well. Going on to Angers. There's not really a great deal to talk about Angers. They've not really added a great deal of big name, or what you would call in Ligue 1 anyway, big name talent. They have brought in Famara Diédhiou, who's the striker who went on a ludicrous scoring spree last season with Clermont. At one point I think he'd scored like 13 goals in his first 13 games or something crazy like that. So they brought him in, so it'll be interesting to see how he can handle the step up. And they brought in Toko Ekambi, who's I believe another forward, I think from Sochaux. To be honest with Angers, it's all about that unit. That team spirit that they have, that Stéphane Moulin gets out of this squad. And I think it's just going to be more of the same, really, of that next season. Not the world's most most exciting side to watch from an attacking perspective. Maybe the introduction of Diédhiou will change that. But they are very organised. They've kept hold of a lot of their key players from last season. I suspect, as with I think probably on par with Lorient, they're going to find it tough, especially second season syndrome with Angers. They're going to find it tough, but I think they will just have enough to maintain their Ligue 1 status.
Especially keeping hold of Sheikh and Doy was the big one. Take care from phone. He's still there as well, isn't he? But yes, he's still there. So he's another one that I don't think he's elite level, but I think he's one of those, the unpredictable pace, directness, sort of another one of those players that they could do with hanging on to if they're not picked off. So no, absolutely, I agree with that. And Montpellier, again, another side that obviously since they won the league, seems like all those years ago, 3 years ago now, they've kind of naturally dropped off a little bit. But last season, again, feels like a bit of a disappointment. Maybe do you expect them to kick on, or much the same again this year?
It will probably be much the same. There was glimpses last season. There were glimpses last season of them sort of something blossoming. Don't quite know what it was, but something positive blossoming. There was a couple of runs that they went on, especially towards the end of the season, where they really looked like they could move. They could kick on this season. Knowing Montpellier, it's a case of let's not get too carried away with them. Key things for them, I think, return to form of Morgan Sanson. He and Riyad Boudebouz are their sort of two real go-to guys, I think, this season, in terms of some kind of creative attacking play. So much will have to go through them. Sanson's just coming back from quite a lengthy injury, so bit by bit it might take him a little longer. Boudebouz had a really good season last season. He's not a big goal scorer, but creativity is his key. I think he got 11 or 12 assists last season, so not too many in the league better than him. Key thing for Montpellier is keeping that defence tight. Yet again, they're coming into a season where they're going to be relying on Vitorino Hilton at the back, who feels like he's about 50 odd. He seems to have just been around forever. So that there's an ever reliance, it seems, on him. I'm surprised they let go of a young defender called Rami Ben Sebaini. He moved to Rennes. I'm surprised they let him go, because from what I saw from his time at Montpellier last season, he actually looked quite handy.
Yeah.
So I am surprised they let him go. But he will be a loss in terms of just pure personnel numbers, if anything. Brian Darboe, who's a bit of a utility player, but was more often than not used in midfield for Montpellier. He's moved on. He moved, I believe, did he go to Saint Etienne? Yes, he went to Saint Etienne. He will be a loss. For them, it's goals. And I really, really struggle to see with them. They are not one of the sides where I can look at them and think, actually, you know what, you are defensively solid enough to compensate for a lack of goals. I do think they are quite leaky. I think, contrary to what I've just been saying, again, there will be another side, I think, that will just about have enough. But I feel for Philippa, who's one of the French Football Weekly quartet of key people, who's a big Montpellier fan. She's not going to be in for a particularly joyous season, I don't think.
No, I think that's probably a fair comment. And I was actually gutted to hear that of the release. I don't know if you remember seeing this story, but they signed a player. What was it? Stotoka, I believe his name was, back end of sort of last season, and he was signed as a player who'd come through like the youth ranks of French football, and then he'd been kicking around in like nowhere league for ages. And then just never really got an opportunity in the first. They've released him, and I was just intrigued because it was always interesting when you find a player that nobody's ever heard of that a team just takes a punt on. But obviously that's not worked out. So it's probably why he never had a club. But no, that was a shame for me. But never mind.
They have brought in Van den Boer from Anderlecht, who could be quite an interesting signing.
To right fullback, isn't he? Yeah. And let go of Jonas Martin as well.
He's part of turning into a bit of a Ligue1 club, it seems, at Real Betis.
Yeah, they're all shipping
going on a bit of a French top flight spree at the minute. But no, he's moved on. He'll be a loss. He will be a loss because he played a good number of games. Nothing spectacular, but just very solid. They will miss him. They'll miss him for experience. They'll miss him for personnel numbers. They've not made a great many signings. They've only made, apart from those that have returned from loan, you're looking at Van den Boer and you're looking at Morgan Sanson's younger brother from Avignon. So I think more will need to come in. It's a case of how that business will go about, because I think the likes of, certainly I think Boudebouz is going to come under quite a bit of transfer scrutiny, I think, over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, he seems to be a wanted man, that's for sure. Before we group another three teams together, I want to put the focus on one team separately. I've changed my mind. Bordeaux, who, again, a lot of people will be familiar with, not just because of the wine, but naturally they are one of the grand old names of French football. Again, been fairly busy in the summer. Jeremy Toulon has come home. You mentioned him earlier on in the pod, Jeremy Menez. I thought rather surprisingly coming back on a free transfer, no less, from AC Milan. That one caught me off guard. They've also added Youssouf Sabaly from PSG, as well as shipping a few out. Do you foresee Bordeaux potentially coming back to, kind of challenging for those European spots again, or is it sort of too much too soon for them to be able to adjust to that again?
This will probably come back to bite me, but I'm actually relatively optimistic for Bordeaux this season. They've made some good signings, first and foremost. Sabaly is an excellent right back. Wasn't necessarily an area that they needed to overly strengthen. They've got a good young right back called Frederick Guilbert, who looked fairly good last season, but I think they've probably been silly to have turned down an opportunity to sign Sabaly on loan from PSG. I just wish somebody would sign him. I wish PSG would just let him go and join the club permanently, because this is now his fourth consecutive season on loan. So he is a really, really good right back. So that's a good signing. Toulon will just add huge experience in midfield. He's been around for such a long time, with such huge Ligue 1 experience. So that's going to be absolutely key. Again, signing him on a free, it made obvious sense really to snap him up, to help as well the youngsters that are in the side, because they have quite a few. I mentioned him earlier, Francois Camino from Bastia, they've signed. Will be interesting to see if he can step up then to sort of a next tier up side. And then Menez. I think we're all looking forward to seeing which Jeremy Menez will turn up for Bordeaux. I think it actually speaks a little bit of volume about his desire to play maybe as well, because I think it was very easy with a player like Menez, who is quite an ego player, shall we say. It would have been very easy for him to have just gone, and I think he actually did turn down a move to the Middle East, just take the money. It would have been very easy for him to have done that, and to sort of he's had to admit that the experiment with him at AC Milan hasn't really worked out as he would have perhaps wanted. He had a good first season and a half, I think, but has just drifted out of the side, I think, since then. So I think it speaks volumes that he has perhaps grown up, that he's accepted this move to Bordeaux, because it's not an easy club to come to. They are another one of those historic clubs that have got great deal of heritage that have just failed to live up to that in recent seasons. But I think under Gourvenec, they have probably the best young French coach, certainly within the country, within the league. So I am quite positive. I think they've added to the side well. The players they've lost are not going to necessarily be huge. I think perhaps he's a bit of a figure of fun at times, but Sheikh Diabate may prove to be a little bit of a miss. He was always reliable for sort of 8, 9, 10 goals in a season, which can make all the difference. But they've added experience to a side that has already got plenty of experience. They've got a number of really exciting youngsters. Youngster to watch out on is one I think most people have heard of recently because of his out of nowhere really links to Manchester United, is Adam Unas. Very, very exciting, very skillful attacker, can play out wide, but can also drift in and play quite central as well. Breakout season last season, so I think it'll be interesting to see how his second season will go. There seems to be a good blend to the Bordeaux side at the minute. I still think they could perhaps have room for a couple more players to join. I think perhaps in defence, they don't look the strongest. They could perhaps add 1 or 2 players there. They've got a couple of really good goalkeepers, but I don't think any particularly stand out. So I think there's room in defence to add a few more players, but I think certainly in midfield and going forward, they have a decent number of options. For once, I'm actually feeling relatively optimistic for Bordeaux this season. So watch them flounder to a 5th place finish.
Just going to say that, yeah. No, I'm kind of with you though. I'm excited by, in a weird way, I'm wondering if Menez can do a Ben Arfa is the and I know, don't get me wrong, a lot of people slightly overrated what Ben Arfa did last year. As good as he was, I think you said on FFW there was a lot of YouTube compilations without a lot of full game sort of time to watch, but nevertheless, for a player who is basically done, he did have a hell of a season, and I wonder if Menez can recapture that. And having watched a bit of Serie A, he was pretty good for AC Milan, it has to be said, and it really caught me off guard, that one. So once he's got his ear put back on, hopefully he can redress the balance. But
exactly,
we'll keep an ear out for that one. Oh, terrible pun.
Oh dear.
Moving swiftly on. Right, let's group 3 more together then. Who do you like the look of out of these 3 clubs? I'll pick Cannes, Lille and St Etienne as a group of clubs. Who do you like the most out of those 3, and maybe who do you fear for the most?
They'll all be safe. First and foremost, there's no issue of any relegation concern. I don't think there are. I think certain fans of those clubs, I know Andrew is relatively pessimistic after their disastrous Europa League qualifying knockout for Lille. He feels it's almost like a 2-step back process, but they have enough. All 3 sides have enough. For me, it's probably Calm, who look forward to seeing. They were such a, at times a real fun side to watch last season. Side that many people just sort of dismiss, relegation fodder kind of thing. But they have Patrice Garand just has this ability to just pull these signings that just, they're not big name signings, they're not glamorous signings. They're just solid signings. That's exactly it. They're solid signings. The big key thing for Khan is what's happening with Andy Delors. He was a big component of their play last season. 12 goals last season. Really, really good season. There was even some people who were making suggestions of could he be a real outside bet for a France call-up. This summer, then, it's his relationship with Khan has just sort of disintegrated. For some reason, he now wants to move to Mexico, to Tigres, Gignac's side. He wants to move there. Tigres want to buy him. Tigres president has come out and said, we've spoken with the player wants to join. His agent wants to work with us on getting a move. They've made 2 offers, undisclosed offers, which Khan have rejected. And Delors still hasn't returned to training. So it's a sad situation because everything seems to be working out really well for him. Khan took a punt on him last season after his less than fun-filled time with Wigan. They brought him to Normandy and he repaid them 12 goals, fantastic return. But something's gone wrong this summer. He looks like he's going to be playing silly buggers in terms of forcing a move. Khan have said we want at least 10 million. Some rumours say they want 12 million. I've even seen some that say they want pushing 20 million. I certainly think something in the sort of 12, 13, 14 million bracket is not a ridiculous amount for a player like Ador. He's still young, has scored goals. And why should Khan give him up easily? They're going to absolutely need his goals for the new season. So with Khan, it very much depends on that. And I wonder how long Khan will let this play out, because will they run the risk of letting this drag out and then selling him towards the end of the window, not having enough time to bring anyone in? Or will they let it just drag out, keep hold of him, and have a sulking Delors playing for them next season, the new season, and underperforming? So I'd like Khan to keep him, and I'd like their relationship to get back to what it was. I'm not overly sure it will. So for them, it's Delors. It really rests on Delors. They brought in a couple of very experienced players. I mean, fans of Fulham will be perhaps surprised to hear that Steve Malbronk is still knocking about. They signed him. They signed Mohamedou Darboe, who's former Lyon and Troyes right back. Roddy Rodlan, who had a really good season actually with Khan on loan last season from Lille. He's turned that into a permanent signing. And Pape Sané, who was in Ligue 2 on loan last season and scored actually quite a few goals. So it may be that they look to thrust him and say, look, there you go. You're our you're our main goal scoring threat this season, but that's quite a risk. So for Khan, for me, it's Delors. If he stays and they can get the best out of him again and keep him happy for a season, maybe even with a promise then that he goes at the end of next season, then they'll be fine. If they can't keep him happy, or he goes and they can't get a like-for-like replacement in, then I have my big concerns for them.
Yeah, I again echo everything you said there, and I'm a big fan of Andy Delors. It does, like you say, reek of pushing a move now, and not good. What about those other two then, St Etienne and Lille? I mean, they're kind of those two clubs that you just never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you think, they're quite a good watch, and other times you go, oh God, really?
I've never thought that with St Etienne.
No, I was pushing it a bit.
With Lille, certainly not since they won the title.
No, fair point. They've of course got Eder permanently, the hero of the Euros. Is it kind of again much of a muchness season for these two as a whole? I mean, is it just a question of if they challenge for those Europa League spots, that's going to be the highlight of their seasons?
Very much so. If you look at Lille, they've not added a great deal. They've added Eder obviously made his move permanent towards the end of the season. They've got they signed a couple of players they had on loan on permanent. They've brought in Palmieri, who will provide a bit more defensive stability. Left back, obviously, because they've lost Jibril Sidibe, who had such a good season last season. He's moved on to Monaco. They managed to bring in a decent chunk of money for him, though. They brought in Sankare, who's a very, very strong player from Gangon. There's not a great deal to be excited about there. It looks increasingly like they're going to be keeping hold of Buffon. His injury seems to have been the reason why more clubs aren't looking to sign him. Whether somebody will come in with a bid as we get closer to the deadline ending, maybe. But certainly no one has come in with any concrete offers as yet. So again, it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that. I think he has come out and said, if I stay, so be it, and I will perform very well. But saying things and actually doing things are two very different things. And for me, his attitude certainly was one of his weaknesses last season. Quite petulant at times. So I think it'll be interesting to see how he reacts. I think if he can realise that, okay, my injury meant I couldn't get the move, so I'm going to play fantastically well for the first half of the season with a view to trying to get a move in January, then that's only going to be good news for Lille. And I think that's almost what they're going to hope his attitude will be. They've got a little bit more going forward. Eder proved very, very effective since his move in January from Swansea. He proved very effective last season as a sort of central figurehead up front. In the European qualifiers, for some reason, he got drifted. He got pushed further out wide by Antonetti. So quite what was going on there, I really don't know. They got the likes of Ronnie Lopez on loan again for the third time. And then they've got Yassine Benzia. Whoever knows what kind of Yassine Benzia is going to turn up. For Lille, it'll be a great season if they can get top 6. For them, I think they would be happy with top 10, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, agreeing. As you say, the less said about Saint Etienne, probably the better.
The only thing I would say for Saint Etienne is they have Robert Beric back, who obviously was out for a huge part of last season with an injury sustained in the match against Lyon. They've added yet another midfielder in Brian Darboe, who actually, to be perfectly honest, is actually quite a good midfielder. But it's an area they didn't overly need. They've lost Baal-Sal, who's quite a solid centre-back. He's moved, I believe, to Qatar side. They have signed Sheikh Mbengue. Nothing to be jumping up and down for, but just a relatively solid left-back. Experience. That's what he'll bring. He's not a left-back that will push forward and contribute to you going forward, but he's just a very solid, relatively stay-at-home left-back, which pretty much sums up Saint-Etienne, to be perfectly honest.
Solid and steady. I always think when I hear Sheikh Mbengue, I always think that's some kind of cooking sauce. It always just sounds like I've just add me Sheikh Mbengue. Anyway, the jokes are terrible tonight. I do apologise. Let's have a look at your boys, Rennes, and we'll group them in with Nice. So maybe start with Nice and then transition onto Rennes. Obviously, they've lost Hassan Ben Arfa. Whatever views you had, he was a key part of what they did last season. But more importantly, they've lost their coach, or they've lost a coach. What sort of season do you expect for Nice? And we'll go on to Rennes after that.
For Nice, it's going to be quite an interesting one. They've They've lost Ben Arthur, obviously, which is a huge blow. Say what you want about him. There's no denying he was a massive, massive factor in their fourth place finish. So to have lost him, the goals that he brought, the flair that he brought, the creativity he brought, the assists he brought, the sort of feel-good factor to the club that he brought is a big, big thing. But I think Nice prepared for that. I think they fully expected that he was going to go. I don't think many diehard Nice fans were thinking, yeah, you know what, he is going to sign a contract extension with us. I think most of them knew once he rediscovered his form, he was going to be off. So I think they managed to prepare themselves for that, brace themselves for that. They've lost Nampalys Mendy. Big loss. He had such a fantastic season last season. He's now moved to Leicester. What they have done, and I think they were quite clever about this, and they identified that he was another player that was probably going to have left at the end of the season, or certainly was going to be approached by other clubs for a move away. They brought in last January Remy Walter from Nancy. I suspect it will be a fairly like-for-like-ish replacement, in so much as he will come in. He is very young. He is very raw. How he can take to Ligue1 football week in, week out, we shall see. So they've although they lost Mendy, they have Walter. Their other big loss is Valère Germain, who has gone back to Monaco. He's only on loan with Nice. Fantastic. He's such a good striker, such an underrated striker, and I am surprised they haven't been a bit more active in trying to sign him, because there were rumours that Monaco were only wanting around 6 to 8 million for him, which would have been an absolute bargain. They have lost him, so we shall see what happens in terms of goals, because between Germain and Ben Arthur, that's an awful big percentage of last season's goals that have gone. Alassane Player has looked pretty good during pre-season, has scored quite a few goals. At the minute, it's looking increasingly likely that he's going to have to be scoring quite a few goals. They have brought in Arnaud Lusamba, who I previously mentioned as well, from Nancy. He's a bit more of a box-to-box kind of midfielder, perhaps more veering towards more of an attack-minded midfielder. So, be interested to see. I don't suspect he will be getting a first-team place. He'll very much be an off-the-bench kind of player, because he is still very young. And then Wyland Cyprien from Lens as well, who had a pretty good season with them last campaign. They signed him again. Whether he gets a perm, I would imagine he instead of Lusamba would get more game time, but it's going to be a very, very interesting season. I can't see them repeating the heroics of last season, because I think they just don't have that same quality. But they have kept hold of the likes of Vincent Conciello, who had a fantastic breakout season last time out. Jean-Michel Seri, who was another part of that midfield. For now, they've kept hold of him, although there are rumours that clubs are interested in him. I think Nice, if I'm perfectly honest, Nice would be very, very happy with a top 8 finish. I suspect top 10 is probably where they're going to be looking come the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned Cyprien there. We will come back to him, because we've had a question on him from one of our listeners. So I'll come back to him. But how are you feeling as a Rennes fan then? So you're coming into the season. You're full of optimism, or you're not full of optimism.
I'm a Rennes fan, so we are the eternal pessimists. Well, look, we've got Christian Gourcuff in charge, so I would hope his appointment brings a happier atmosphere. He's a hugely respected coach. It's Breton through and through. Has previously had a spell at the club, which everyone tries to forget about, because it was not particularly an enjoyable season. But he's a proven coach. The things that he did with Lorient were fantastic. In terms of personnel, at the minute, who knows what 11 Rennes are going to be playing? They have a huge number of players. I think somebody tweeted out the other day they've got nearly 40 pro contracted players on their books. So they actually have enough that they could put out 4 sides.
Wow.
So we shall see. I mean, obviously, Ousmane Dembele was the big loss, an inevitable loss. All the talk that he had around him last season, a move away was definitely going to happen, and good luck to him at Dortmund. Players they brought in, I mean, not a huge amount, if I'm perfectly honest, get me jumping for joy. Those that have actually signed, that haven't returned on loan, we've got Clément Chantôme from Bordeaux. He's an okay player. I don't quite know why we've signed him. Centre of midfield was not an area we were particularly weak in, but we've signed him. Okay, fair enough. Paul Nardi, fantastic young goalkeeper from Monaco, signed him on loan. I think they signed him on the basis that they just assumed that Costil was going to be leaving, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So I think Nardi will be a little bit frustrated that he won't perhaps get as much games as he thought. And then there's been a huge raft of players that have returned on loan. I think some will have a part to play this season with Rennes, some perhaps not. I think Wesley Saïd is one to perhaps look out for. He's a young striker. He had a spell with Dijon last season. He played relatively well, got a few goals, and has played okay pre-season. He may have there's been a formation change with Rennes since Christian Gourcuff took over, in so much as we now are playing what looks like a more traditional 4-4-2. So it may be that Wesley Saïd plays a part in that, with us playing 2 strikers. One player I'm really hoping will play a part this season, but I fear he won't, I say youngster, but he's 23, I think now, is Adrien Hunou. He was on loan with Clermont last season. He had a fantastic season with them. I think he was in the Ligue 2 team of the season. I think he was voted as Clermont's player of the season. There's just something that I don't think the people at Rennes believe in him. So I'm a huge, huge fan of him. He's been in a French Football Weekly's Le 50 a couple of times. I don't think the management at Rennes have that same belief. So I fear that he will either go out on loan or, worse still, will be sold. In terms of players that we already had, I mean, a lot this season. It's going to be a big season for Ntep. Obviously, last season was a horrible season for him, with just injury after injury. So it was a real stilted season for him. Never really got running. I think the form of Dembele perhaps overshadowed him as well, and that may have had a bit of a psychological effect on him. So Dembele gone. I think hopefully Ntep can rediscover his top form, because if he can, he's pushing as one of the better players in the league. When you think 2 years ago, he was breaking into the France team. He was talk of so many potential moves away. So big season, I think, for him. And then Kamil Grosicki, he part of a very successful Polish side at the European Championships, caught the eye of quite a few sides. I think if we can keep hold of him and play him, because the amount of substitute appearances he had last season was ridiculous. But if we can play him, keep him happy, get him back to sort of his European Championship best, then again, I feel like I'm putting a lot of these sides in this top 10 bracket. But I would be happy with top 10. If I'm feeling perhaps a little bit more pushy, I would like to think top 8. We shall see.
You can have top 8. That's fine. But we'll let you have that. That's not too much. If you're just a champions, I might have had a word, but no, you can have top 8. And I'm like you. I love Kamil Krasicki. He's one of those players that it must really annoy you, as it does me, when you follow a league which is, let's be honest, not as fashionable as others, and then all of a sudden you get all these sort of big name accounts going, oh, that this player, yeah, definitely look out for him. Watched him for years. You're thinking you haven't seen him at all. He's been brilliant for the whole season, and all of a sudden he plays for Poland and everyone knows about him. Very frustrating. Anyway, that's just my personal gripe. Right, we've got 4 more teams to cover, and I want to give these a little bit of their own sort of spotlight. Before we come on to the big 3, let's open the big box in the corner with an elephant hiding inside it called Marseille. Quite a big box with quite a lot going on inside it, I think it's fair to say. A lot of people won't be aware of what's happened this summer. So can you just give our listeners a breakdown? What has happened, what hasn't happened, and what do you think is going to happen?
It comes down to sort of one key thing, and that's finances. In order to meet the requirements of the DNCG, which is like the football financial regulator in France, you sort of have to basically balance. It's all about balancing your books and ensuring you're meeting certain financial criteria that the DNCG set out. And it transpired that Marseille were going to miss that target unless they basically sold players. And obviously the big one for them in terms of departures was Batshuayi to Chelsea. What they got for him, less what they then had to pay Standard Liège as a part of the sell-on clause of his contract, I think just ticked them over the sort of requirement. I think they were 1 million over where they needed to be. So financially speaking, they seem okay in terms of meeting the DNCG requirements, but what of course that means is they have very little transfer funds to spend. Because of course anything that they then spend will then bring back down and probably below then that limit that the regulators have put in place. They've then lost Vincent Lebrun, the president. He, I think much to most Marseille fans' delight, decided he'd had enough. He then left a couple of weeks ago. Louis Dreyfus, who's the lady who owns Marseille Football Club, decided she was going to put the club up for sale. See, after the absolutely horrific season they had last season, I think she just decided it was a problem she just didn't want to deal with anymore. So she's put the club up for sale. In the interim, there's been a few other high-profile departures in terms of at sort of board and management level. Along with Lebrun, there's been a couple of other sort of directors and board members who've gone. A lot of Louis Dreyfus family friends and sort of associates have been brought in to fill those positions, presumably just on a temporary basis until the club is sold. Frank Passy is still the man in charge in terms of coaching level. Doesn't look like they're going to be bringing anyone in. They're going to be running with him as coach. There has been talk that if new buyers come in and can promise certain things, Bielsa has said he'd be more than happy to come back. I don't think that's going to happen. I think at the minute, anyone who wants to buy that club will have to have a good, long, hard think about what they want to get out of buying a football club, because there's an awful lot that they need to sort out first. But then on the pitch, if you like, in terms of players, they've lost Batshuayi. They've lost Dave Mandanda. I would argue Mandanda is arguably probably a bigger loss than Batshuayi, if I'm perfectly honest. They've lost quite, obviously, a lot of other players have gone back to previous clubs on loan. Benjamin Mendy's gone to Monaco, who's decent left back. He's gone. Nicolas Nkulu, experienced centre back. He's gone. The list of players that have gone, it seems like it's almost like a repeat thing with Marseille. We were saying this time last season, all those players, they left for at least they left for monetary amounts. You said Dimitri Payet, at least they got a little bit of money for him, but these other players, a lot of these have gone for free, which I think galls a lot of Marseille fans. terms then of players they brought in, well, there's nothing really to get overly excited about. They brought in Henri Bedemo from Lyon on a free, decent left back. They brought in Bafétimbi Gomis on loan from Swansea, decent striker. He's not going to replace. He's not going to be getting 18, 19, 20 goals a season, but he'll probably get 10, 11 maybe, which could just about do enough. They're still persisting with Tovan. They've got him back on loan. I think there's an option to buy for, I can't remember how much that was, 11 million euros maybe, I think I read. They're still persisting with him. I don't quite know why. There was only, again, very fleeting glimpses of what he could offer last season when he went back on loan with them, but I don't know, he just seems more hassle than he's worth. There's obviously this ongoing transfer of George, Kevin and Kudu to Spurs. That all seems to be resting on whether Clinton and G can in turn get a visa to go back to Marseille as part of that transfer. There's just not a lot to be feeling confident. If you're a Marseille fan, you're not going to be thinking, oh, last season was just a blip. You're going to be thinking, you know what, we could be in for something similar, if not even maybe even worse this new season. Because, with time running out and with not a huge amount of money to play with, they need to be bringing in a lot of players. Otherwise, they're going to be relying on to be perfectly honest, some fairly ropey, experienced players and then a heck of a lot of youngsters. Gomis is it as far as strikers go. Once Gomis has gone, they are left with 18, 19-year-old reserve team players.
Kids. Yeah. They haven't even got Big Stephen Fletcher anymore. I mean,
what a loss that is.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a loss that is. So really, they're going to be looking at the likes of Tovan. Tovan now is going to be an experienced player. They're going to be looking at him and saying, right, you know what, you're going to have to take this team forward. Cabela, the same.
Can you imagine?
It's not going to be a fun. Well, for Marseille fans, it's not going to be a fun season. It's going to be a fantastic season for everybody else.
Everybody else, yeah.
There's nothing in Ligue 1. There's nothing quite like a Marseille meltdown.
No. Well, the only thing that beats that is a Jonathan Pearce commentary on Liga. That's always a highlight of mine, for very different reasons, which I know you agree with me on. Yes, I think it's fair to say they are a little bit of a mess. But I wonder if Doria might actually get some game time now that...
Well, he turned down a couple of pre-season games.
Maybe not then.
So we shall see. They may have to, because there may just be no one else.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's quite the upturn, but good bit of information. That let's have a look at the last couple here. Then let's touch briefly on Monaco. Not a huge amount to say, but they've been quietly quite busy in this window, haven't they? So
they have had a very, very good transfer window so far.
Agree.
I've been very, very, very impressed because there was never a huge issue with them in midfield and going forward. Their big issue, I thought, was last season especially, was defence. And you look at where they have strengthened. They brought in De Sanctis as a reserve goalkeeper, so a very decent reserve goalkeeper. They've then signed Djibril Sidibe and Benjamin Mendy, who will slot in very nicely at right back and left back. And they've signed Campbell Glick from Torino to sit in the centre of defence.
Great signing as well.
They are three superb signings. Campbell Glick, €8 million, I think. Benjamin Mendy wasn't a great deal more. Sidibe, I think, was around 14, 15 million euros. So, it's far in excess of anyone else apart from PSG in terms of expenditure. But in the grand scheme of things, it's still not a lot of money for some really good players. So they've signed those. They've signed Ait Benasser, which you mentioned previously, from Nancy, but he'll go back on loan, so we're not going to see him in a Monaco shirt. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Corentin Jean, young striker who they signed from Troyes, summer transfer window last season, but he then spent the season on loan with Troyes. He obviously now will return to Monaco. Whether they send him out on loan again, I don't know. Great news for Monaco is they've got Valère Germain back. And for me, that's one of the most exciting things I'm looking forward to this season is that Germain-Falcao partnership. I've said it numerous times on Twitter during the summer. Pre-season, they have been fantastic. Falcao seems to be, seems to have rediscovered. I'm not going to say anywhere like what he was before because, he was world beater at one point, but certainly something approaching that. He looks happy. I was about to say he looks fit, but then of course he's now out for a month. But he was looking happy. Movement was great. Really playing for the team. There was didn't seem to be any ego, which would have been very easy for a player like him to have displayed. But his relationship with Germain pre-season has looked fantastic. So once he returns from injury, fingers crossed, that will be only the 4 weeks that he's out for. So shouldn't miss, hopefully, too much. Perhaps annoyingly for Monaco, he will miss the 2 Champions League qualifiers against Villarreal. So that could be a big blow. But if I was a Monaco fan, of which, if you look at the stadium week in, week out, there probably aren't that many. But if I was a Monaco fan, I'd be thinking, you know what? Last season, we should have had second place. They had second place sewn up and then just capitulated in that basically the last month of the season. They blew it well and truly. I think they have the squad now. And that's the key thing, I think, is they have the depth in their squad to really, they as far as I'm concerned, that second place should be theirs with ease. And for me, on paper anyway, I think they should be the side pushing PSG the hardest.
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I'm quite excited by them. And like you, I'm a big Germain fan. And I happen to think he could have done a very nice job at a lot of big European clubs this summer. But obviously seems to be staying at Monaco, and I'm all for it. And of course, one to keep an eye on for all the hipsters out there, the young lad Kylian Mbappé-Lotin. I think quite big things are expected of him this season.
Very good summer.
17 years old and built like a brick, you know what. What about the top 2 of last season then? We'll save PSG for last because I know everyone's desperate to hear about PSG. But Lyon, now that quite a lot to go into here. So rather than sort of looking at, we all know how they finished last season. They got better and better after the turmoil of the start of the season. Obviously, Genesio coming in steadied the ship. They got Fekir back fit at the end of the season. Lacazette was firing, and everything seemed to be going well. We've arrived this summer, and obviously Samuel Umtiti has moved to Barcelona. I'm really excited to see that, by the way, particularly how I don't know if you saw how Jeremy Mathieu defended yesterday, but I think Umtiti will be great. No, I think Umtiti will be straight into that Barcelona defence, but they've replaced him with Nicolas Nkulu from Marseille on a free. And as we speak, at time of recording, 7th of August, for those checking in, Alex Lacazette is still a Lyon player. What's your view on the will he won't he situation? We had a game last night, which maybe we'll touch on in a minute, where PSG beat Lyon in the French sort of charity shield, if you will. And there was quotes after the game. Lacazette was taken off at half-time with a supposed injury. Genesio saying one thing, Olas saying another thing. Olas has obviously been his quiet, shy, retiring self all summer. Not. What do you make of it? Because you think Lacazette will stay put despite the constant rumours, don't you?
I mean, I'm going to have so many people holding this one against me, but I think he will. I think if he was going to have gone, I'd like to think Olas, as the businessman he was, would have got that deal done and dusted. I think he would have, spoken to Arsenal, who seem to be at the minute the sole club in for him. I think he'd have said to Arsenal, look, this is the price, pay it and you have him, kind of thing. And they would have worked out a deal. Obviously Arsenal have their own way of doing transfers, which you'll be very familiar with.
Don't remind me.
But I don't know. I just think we're now looking at, what are we looking? Less than a month to the close of the transfer window?
Yeah. And
I look at who's available out there, because they're going to need a replacement. They can't go into the new season relying on Fekir, who is still recovering from injury. He's still on his, sort of making his comeback. They can't be relying on him. Maxwell Cornet, who very, very young, very, very raw, and Aldo Kalulu, who's even younger and even rawer. They can't be relying on those as supposedly France's second, I don't want to say biggest because that's what I mean, but second side, if you will, Champions League football. They can't be. For last summer, they were constantly linked with Ben Yedder. He's gone. They're not going to be getting him. And I just think, who could they get in? They're going to need someone who can come in and pretty much hit the ground running as far as scoring goals is going to be. And I just struggle to see if that player exists for Lyon, if I'm perfectly honest. So I don't know.
What would their budget? What would their budget be if they were to? So, I mean, let's just say hypothetically, because I can obviously speak on an Arsenal perspective on this. Arsenal notoriously look for the best price, and there's a lot of talk that they are keen on Lacazette, but they're not 100% sold on him. So they're kind of looking around at what else is available. And it sounds to me very much like one of these that they're leaving it to the last minute. But as you rightly said there, Olas is a very astute businessman. Whatever you think of him, he's very, very astute. I mean, what is the budget that Lyon would have to go and get a striker? Because they're not going to sell Lacazette without the guarantee of knowing they can bring someone in, are they?
Well, that's the thing. They're under no financial pressure to sell. There's no issue of they have to sell him to balance any kind of books or anything like that. So, Olas is very, very happy to sit there and say, look, this is the price, this is the price, this is the price. You pay it, you can talk to me about potentially signing him. You're not going to ask that, you're not going to pay us that. Well, walk on kind of thing. There's no pressure from Olas's position anyway to sell. The only thing that you have to think of is we saw what happened at the start of last season when Lacazette was not in a good frame of mind. He wasn't happy with how his contract negotiations were played out quite publicly last summer. And that was evidenced in his play. First part of the season, he was woeful. There's no way to describe it. I think in the first 12 games or something like that, he'd only scored 2 goals. So keeping him happy is a big, big thing. You are not going to get the best out of him unless he is happy. And it's no coincidence that it took Fournier leaving and Genesio coming in for Lacazette to finally hit his top form again. So that's something that, to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure Olas cares about. I think he'll very much see that as well. That's Genesio's problem. He's got to talk to him on the training pitch and get him to be playing his best week in, week out, regardless of what his situation is behind the scenes. Olas is very much a case of, I want what's best for the club, but I also want what's best for business. So he's not stupid. He knows that if someone does come in with that offer, he will talk to them. And you know what? He probably would sell them. But I think the only thing that's stopping me is just that lack of a viable replacement. There's pressure on now. There's an expectation with Lyon that after a couple of seasons, he obviously had that great run of 7 championships in the sort of early 2000s. And then they had a few barren seasons. And then, obviously, they had 2 seasons ago, they had that superb run with Fournier where they really, really pushed PSG all the way. And all of a sudden, there was the good time feeling back with Lyon. They had that great run. They eventually finished second last season, although it didn't look like it was going to happen at one point. They've got their new stadium, fantastic new stadium. Olas is very much going to want to continue that feel-good factor within the club. And by club, I also mean fans. Keeping the fans on board is a big, big thing. They've sold them TT already this summer. To sell them TT and Lacazette, and the replacements are Nicolas Nkulu, who had a woeful season with Marseille last season, bring him in on a free, and then another striker, whoever that may be. Fans are going to be questioning. Well, actually, what are we just going to be turning into a selling club? Where's the plan going forward? we're well known for developing these young players. But let's start to have a bit of belief that actually, you know what, we're not going to do anything in terms of. Actually, it was quite interesting listening to Olas last night about after the Trophy de Champion defeat. He was very, very outspoken in terms of almost like the rest of France should give up because PSG's budget is just so overwhelming. No one can compete. So effectively, why should we even try, kind of a thing? So it was quite an interesting sort of turns of phrases that Olas spoke last night. So I don't know. I can't see Umtiti and Lacazette going in this window, and there not being other high profile, big, not as high profile, obviously, but big names coming in as a replacement. Lyon fans ultimately are not going. They knew Umtiti was going to leave, but they're not going to be as happy knowing that the replacement is just Nicola and Kulu. Great. Well, he's older. He's significantly worse. What's the message that we're giving out there? And the same. You look at Lacazette. I just can't see them both going in the summer. And I just feel that if he was going to have gone, he would have gone already. So, I mean, we shall see. We shall see what happens. He could still go, but my gut feeling is it's going to be close. I can sway either way if I'm perfectly honest. But if he was to force me to come down on one side, I'd probably say he would stay. Yeah,
and of course with Fekir, hopefully, fingers crossed, staying fit all season, he'll be another one very much on the shopping list of many if he can prove his fitness. And I just wonder, just very briefly, because I'm just curious on this. Do you think the player himself, Lacazette, do you think he might have any bearing on trying to force a move? Because there's a lot of talk in the English sort of media outlets that Arsenal are essentially trying to almost force Lyon's hand by making the player cause some noise to force a move.
All I can say there is good luck with that, Lacazette, because Lacazette v Olas, there's only going to be one winner. Olas is one of, if not the most stubborn presidents in Ligue 1. He's been around long enough to know exactly how all this works. And to be honest, if Lacazette starts to become a pain and starts to be trying to force it, it's only going to strengthen Olas's desire to keep hold of him. So I think it's in Lacazette's best interests if he keeps up this. It maybe just be a front of, yes, I'm happy to stay. Because if he goes down the route of wanting to cause trouble, if he goes down the route of wanting to kick up a fuss and handing in a transfer request, you're not really going to win that battle with Olas.
No, not going to end well. We should of course stay tuned to see what happens that one. I have a feeling this one's going to run right to the end of the window, so we shall see. But nevertheless, Lyon are, along with Monaco, probably the two biggest challenges, if indeed such things exist. And that wraps us nicely into PSG, who, as you said last night, scooped the first quote-unquote trophy of the season, beating Lyon by 4-1. They are another team that have had a lot of change this summer. Laurent Blanc obviously has left the job. Unai Emery is the new coach. There's been some significant transfer developments. We mentioned him previously. Hatem Ben Arfa has traded in to join the PSG revolution. Grzegorz Krychowiak, who I'm a massive fan of myself, along with sort of the slightly lower profile signing of Thomas Meunier at fullback. And during pre-season, I even saw the lesser spotted Serge Aurier wearing the captain's armband. I mean, what is going on in Paris? Straightforward question. I mean, Zlatan obviously is the biggest high-profile departure, but even with Zlatan gone, can anyone compete? I mean, it just seems to me like this is PSG's league. Well, treble to win again, surely.
Prior to last night's game, which I know is an exhibition match, there's not huge amounts you can take from it, but the attitude that PSG gave and the performance that they gave and the style of their play. If you'd have asked me pre that game, I'd have said, you know what, yeah, Monaco could push them something close to how Lyon pushed them 2 seasons ago. I'm not sure that's going to be the case.
Nor me.
It looks like there's going to be a couple more big name signings joining PSG before the close of the transfer window. So, if I'm perfectly honest, I think we could see. I don't think it's going to be, the sort of 1st of March championship win that we saw last season. But I think it will again be pretty straightforward for PSG. What I thought was quite interesting last night was Ben Arfa playing as the sort of central attacking figure. Yeah. I thought they might have given Augustin, after his successful summer, I thought they might have given him a go, but Ben Arfa, and it seems Ben Arfa did what Ben Arfa did last season, so much as a few fancy showboaty bits, a very, very well taken goal. That's it. It's almost like I'll do my bits for the vines on Twitter. I'll produce, I'll score a great goal, or produce a bit of skill. That probably do me, I think, for the 90 minutes.
That'll do me, yeah. I've had my fun.
Yeah, so I think the key thing for what I didn't see the game last night. I've seen various bits and pieces of highlights, but read a couple of match reports as well. Was how important Pastore will be this season.
Oh, please wax lyrical, because I love Javier Pastore, and I've been saying if he stays fit, he's one of the players basically throughout the world that I love watching. I mean, he's got the 10 shirt this year. It's just written for him to have a good season, surely.
I would hope so. And when you think that when everyone's fit in PSG, their midfield three, if it looks like they're going to carry on with this sort of 4-3-3 formation, they're sort of what I would presume would be their first choice midfield three will be Krychowiak, Verratti, with Pastore just in front of them.
Wow.
It's fantastic. There's very few in world football that could challenge, arguably, for that. I know fans of other sides would probably care to argue more. And then when you think, well, on the bench, they could still have Matuidi, Rabiot,
Thiago Motta.
Thiago Motta, I'm not a particularly big fan of him, but Thiago Motta, I mean, to a much lesser extent, you've got Benjamin Stambouli as well. But their first choice midfield stacks up with anyone else's from any other division around Europe, as far as I'm concerned. I think it wasn't the greatest of news for Cavani last night that it just did not look like they needed him. Di Maria, Lucas, and Ben Arfa looked incredibly dangerous. Di Maria, I'm not his biggest fan, but I can openly admit he's a very, very good player and had a very good season last season. Has just carried on that form, it seems. So it's ominous signs. They had Kurzawa. I'm a fan of Kurzawa. What I haven't been was a fan of his move to PSG. I think that's really impeded his progress. But he was superb last night. Aurier, if he can get over his troubles, there's no denying he's a superb right back. And then they've got, Silva will come back from injury. They've then got David Luiz. I can't say I'm actually the biggest fan. If I'm perfectly honest, I'd much rather see PSG going with a centre-back pairing of Marquinhos and Kimpembe, who's the young under-21 centre-back. Big fans of them both. Marquinhos is a superb defender, but they seem to be messing around with him to the extent where I don't know whether he'll still be a PSG player or not. It took them plenty long enough to finally give him permission to play for Brazil in the Olympics. But as far as I'm concerned, you look at PSG and they can put out two sides, and both sides would probably win the title with relative ease.
Yeah, I did want to pick up on something you said there, just about, so obviously Emre is coming into a job with a million riches. So you touched upon the fact that you still expect there to be some business. Two questions linked into one, really. Do you expect that business to be in a forward area? Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Draxler has started to creep out the woodwork. And linked to that question, do you still think that what El Khalifi has said about Cavani being the number 1, number 9 this season, as a sentence to get your head around, do you think that is the case, or is that a double bluff? Because he seemingly was gone at the end of last season, and all of a sudden now he is the saviour again.
I think he'll stay. I don't think anyone will come in for him. I think they have to give him a go. They have to give him a go because of the Zlatan impact and effect of that side has now gone. Ibrahimovic had such a huge aura around him, even when he wasn't playing, that probably had an impact on Cavani, whether he realised it himself or not. So I think with Ibra gone, I think you have to give Cavani a chance. I think he will be given the chance, but I suspect with us still having the best part of a month to the transfer window and the season starting next season, if he's not on the score sheet in the first couple of games, I suspect, PSG will be on the market for somebody. There's one or two players that they've been linked with anyway. Draxler is not a player they need, if I'm perfectly honest. No. I don't overly see where he would fit in, unless well, it depends. If they want to get the best out of Pastore, then Draxler is not a player they need. If they're thinking that Pastore is not going to be the central figure, which I doubt, considering they've given him the number 10 shirt, then maybe Draxler would be an answer there. But I just don't see, with Pastore being quite obviously going to be an important figure for PSG this season, I don't see where Draxler would fit in. So that was a curious rumor that I saw, and I don't know. It just seems we just buy anybody because they're a big name, without a thought of actually, where's he going to fit into the squad? I think there's, a striker arguably is something that they might want to look for, but Draxler is not. It's not a player that they need.
No, it does make me wonder because obviously there's not a lot of strikers on the market. Well, particularly if you're an Arsenal fan, that's what we have you believe. But there isn't that many. Certainly, Higuain was one I believe PSG looked at and obviously ultimately chose not to go for. So there isn't that many that would really be not an upgrade on Cavani, but in the league they're in, unless they want to go all out for the Champions League. You can't really see them going after anybody like a Lewandowski or I just can't see that. So it does make you wonder, why not just give Augustano or Ongenda a try, as you said.
I mean, if you're perfectly honest, Lewandowski, I think, would fit into this side brilliantly.
Oh, God, he'd get 50 a season, wouldn't he? Let's be honest.
I think he would be a super... When you look at the width that PSG have got and the creative players that they can, have to set things up for Lewandowski, he would be a superb signing. I'm just not sure if Bayern would let him go, especially to a Champions League rival.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and especially Ancelotti, I think, would want to work with him. But no, you are absolutely right. Well, that gives us a very nice flavour. We're just going to finish with a couple of very quick questions, if we may, because we've had a couple of questions in from our listeners. So you can be as brief as you like with these. Really, we had one from Gunnar Through, which is at Far Too Easy. He asked about the Lacazette situation, which obviously we've covered. We had one here from Big Kris, at Kris_Okie1. Good question, this. What player do you think which player do you think will make a breakthrough this season in Ligue
1? In terms of young players, you have to say, keep an eye out on Mbappe. He is, well, as much as you could say this about a 17-year-old who's played next to no senior football, he is perhaps the next big thing. I think a lot of people saw what he did in the summer with the French under-19 side as they won the European Championships. He was without doubt one of, if not the star player in that tournament. He is definitely a player to keep an eye on. I think I've mentioned him earlier on the podcast. There's a couple of the Nancy players Clement Lenglet, fantastic centre back. I think you look at Nice, and you're looking at the likes of Remy Walter. You're looking at the likes of Arnaud Lusamba. Keep an eye out on them. Maxwell Cornet at Lyon as well. He's still so raw, but we saw numerous times last season just how good he could be. So I think there's still plenty. It seems that as much as the Premiership and La Liga and Bundesliga and Serie A decide they want to cherry pick the best young players from France, France still finds a way to sort of carry on producing them. So, when you think actually, is there going to be that many because so many left in the summer? Well, actually, when you actually look and watch the games, and keep an eye out, focus on teams, and do your research, there are still so many youngsters coming through.
Yeah, there's a big talent pool. That's one thing you can never knock Liga for. There's always seems to be another big star, and I suppose even in theory, Fekir could be not so much a breakthrough, but if he can get fit, he can be the player.
Yeah, I mean you've got Adam Unas at Bordeaux. Yep. You've got Thomas Lemar at Monaco.
Yep.
There's so many. There's so many in that sort of 23 and under bracket.
Bernardo Silva's another one I want to keep a close eye on.
This will be an important season for him because it wasn't a particularly good season last season for him, as opposed to season before when he was really, really good. With the additions that Monaco have made, he's not quite as important to them as perhaps he was a season and a half ago. So I think he's going to have to work hard, I think, to rediscover that form and force his way back into being one of those sort of automatic starters.
Yeah, agreed. Plenty to look out for, and I will, of course, Rich, give you a chance to plug at the end the Le 50, because that is where you get all your juicy gossip about who to look out for. So we'll plug that in a second. A little nod to Kris for his second question, which was about PSG's midfield, which we've also covered. Here's one from our friend of the show, Simon Collings. He wanted to ask you whether you thought PSG were right to sack Laurent Blanc for Unai Emery, and where you think he might end up managing next.
I was of the belief that, yes, I think it probably was the right time for Blanc to move on. I think he just wasn't getting that progression in the Champions League that PSG so desperately crave. I think tactically he was found out at that real top level in that Man City second leg, where he made some curious choices with the PSG side he put out. So I think, yes, it probably was the right time for him to move on. I think he'd probably taken PSG as far as he could. He's taken them to being the domestic dominant side that just win everything. They now needed someone with that European expertise to sort of kick them on to the next level. Saying that, I didn't necessarily think Unai Emery was the man to have gone for. I will hold my hands up. All I know of Unai Emery is from what I see in sporadic Europa League games, so I'm not the best person to make a judgment on that. This is just from what I knew. From all accounts, though, he's been a breath of fresh air. He's brought in a fresh pair of eyes to the PSG side, some new ideas. Players seem to have taken all that on board, seem to be loving working under him. I think in no small part, the departure of Zlatan would have had a big impact on that. I think there was probably an element, whether it's a good thing or not, I don't know, but there was probably an element of undermining from Zlatan when Blanc was in charge of, Blanc may be saying one thing, but if Zlatan says something on the pitch, do you listen to Zlatan over Laurent Blanc? So with Ibrahimovic gone as well, it probably frees up a lot of people in the club, both at management and player level. But yeah, from all accounts, and then obviously, you can't fault the performance that they gave last night. Emery has the European pedigree at Europa League level that we know. It'll be interesting now with all the riches he has at his disposal at PSG, whether that European expertise, not to the top tier, but to the second tier, if you like, that European expertise combined then with this smorgasbord of huge name players is the recipe for that European top tier success that PSG want.
Yeah, so it was a very sort of weirdly seemed to just happen overnight, didn't it? Just, yep, he's gone by. That was it. Two quick, you can just give a one-word answer to these if you like, because they're quite vague. Hey, it's Football, who I believe is a new follower, so welcome, sir or madam. How much does Jeremy Toulon have in the tank for Bordeaux? I'm going to slightly tweak that question and just ask you, do you think it will be a good signing, yes or no?
It will be a good signing, I think. I think he just about has enough in the tank. But I think then also you have to think about what he can bring off the pitch as well with all his experience. So I think what he can bring there outweighs any issues on age and whether he does or doesn't have 30-odd, best part of 40 games in him.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And we also had this one from Alexei Otonen on the Lacazette theme again. Interesting question, this one. Do you think Lacazette has been hyped more than he should be? I think that's meant to be. And or do you think he's underrated? Which camp do you sit in?
I'm in the middle. I think he's been hyped to a degree that he deserves. I don't think he's been overhyped, because I think a lot of people go by Champions League performances. A lot of people go by the odd game that's televised of Lyon's, where he might not be at his best. But I think, look at his scoring record, and there are very few players over the last 3 seasons who've scored more than him. In fact, I would perhaps argue, and I'm sure StatBods will probably point me right, but probably as a guess, only Ibrahimovic has scored more cumulatively over the last 3 seasons than Lacazette. So goal scoring, there's no question that he has that pedigree. So I don't think he's been overhyped. I think he's got all the hype that he's got has been richly deserved. Similarly, I don't think he's underrated. I think everyone now knows what to expect from him. He's been the talk of transfer movement for a good couple of seasons now. So there's been plenty of opinion pieces and player profile pieces that people will know what to expect. So I think expectations are where they are, in a correct place. They're not too much and they're not underrated either.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Samuel Mybrostad, I think that's how you spell his surname. How good is Willan Cyprien? Is he ready to take on Ligue
1? It may be a little bit too early for him. He's had a couple of decent seasons with Lens. One of their better players, without a doubt. But it's a big ask to step up to this Nice side. He will get game time. I don't think he'll be an automatic starter, but he will get game time. Nice are a very good side for him to go to. He'll get excellent development. They've got a great system in place there, so he will develop well there. If he can continue the development he's shown, perhaps needs to increase that development a little bit more. But he's along the right path. But I would expect we will see flashes of something that. Glimpses, I think, of what he can be. This won't necessarily be a season where we'll think, oh crikey, he's going to make a move instantly to a bigger side. But he's a decent acquisition for Nice.
Yeah, well said. And our final question, this is off-piste, and he hasn't actually asked me this, but I know he's intrigued. One of our panelists, Ross, who does the English Breakfast podcast with me, he's a big Southampton fan, so it wouldn't be fair, Rich, to not ask you how you think the lovely Claude Puel will get on, because I'm a big fan, and I know Ross. I've kind of sold him the Puel dream. So feel free to either big him up or shatter my dreams, but I'm sure Ross would welcome your views on how you think he'll do at Southampton.
Puel and Southampton seem on paper anyway, I think, to be a very, very good combination. Puel has developed a great youth setup at Nice. From all accounts, that's something that exists at Southampton. They seem to have a very good track record of producing some really good young players. He can handle more experienced, a bit more. Well, put it this way: look at what he got. Look at what he got out of Ben Arfa last season. So he can handle even the most troublesome of players very well. He is a pretty good man manager. He can make a player feel really, really wanted and really part of the side. So I I'm really hoping it works out well because, I really, really wanted Remy Gard to work out, and it was such a shame he went to Aston Villa. So here's hoping that the next Liga manager to cross the channel could perhaps be a little bit more successful. And if I'm perfectly honest, there's no reason why I wouldn't believe that.
No, I'm with you. I'm glad you were on my side of the fence because Ross would have been very upset if he hadn't said the same as me. Right, that's brilliant, Rich. Thank you very much. We have gone into great detail, and it's been really, really good. And I'm sure our listeners will find that very interesting. And of course, the season gets underway. I think I'm right in saying, is it PSG open up the season on Friday? I think I'm right in saying. Frantically looks for the fixtures. Yes, they're away at Bastia, and Monaco are at home to Guingamp on Friday, the 12th of August. So the season will be off and running. Before we leave, let's get your predictions. I'm not going to ask you who you think is going to win the league because that is quite frankly a pointless question. Who do you back for those Champions League spots? Who do you think gets the Europa League, and who are your three to go down?
I'm thinking I think it's going to be Monaco and Lyon. I think will be battling it out for second and third. I think, as I said earlier, Monaco probably have more in their squad to take that second place. As for the other sort of the remaining sort of 2-3 places, I think you're probably looking. I would like to think Bordeaux would be up there, and then outside from that, you're probably looking at similar teams like your Saint Etienne's, maybe your Lille's, and who knows, maybe even Rennes, but we shall see. In terms of going down, I do think Dijon and Nancy will struggle this season, and I just don't see. Yeah, I'd probably go Nantes as my third team, if I'm honest. Between perhaps Nantes and possibly Toulouse. It depends how the Toivonen move can work out.
Well, I'm not far differing from you. I've got obviously PSG. We both agree on and win the league. I've got Monaco and Lyon again, same as you in the top three. And I also went Bordeaux. I got a sneaky feeling Bordeaux will be back up there this year. So both of us will look really silly when that doesn't happen. And the bottom three, I've also gone. Agree with you. I think Metz of the three will be the one that are likely to stay up. But I've gone with Nancy and Dijon. I've actually gone for Guingamp to fall. I hope I'm wrong, if I'm honest, but. They're a club I think everyone likes. There's something quite harmless about Guingamp. Sort of plucky little sort of farmer's town, as the joke in France is. Yeah, the hipster's choice, to coin a phrase. And anybody you particularly fancy to come up from Ligue 2? Because I know we don't necessarily follow it directly, but is there a favourite for that division? I think you could potentially be looking at Le Havre being runaway winners of that. They came within one goal. Yes, they had to win by 8, wasn't it? Last season. There had to be some ludicrous goal swing last game of the season, and they came within one goal of it. Metz nearly blew it. But I think you're looking at probably Le Havre will walk away with that. Yeah. As long as Evian don't bottle it, that's what the most. That's if they still exist. They that's very true, actually. Yeah. Financially, they've already been chucked down. Well, then they got relegated, didn't they? Last season. 2 divisions. Yeah. And then they look set. I think it's with it's almost entering receivership levels. So things aren't looking good for them. No, it really isn't good when a club goes out of business. So let's hope for better things. But we'll wrap it there then, Rich. So thank you ever so much for your time as always. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your views. And no doubt we'll collar you again at some point, I'm sure, when something goes off, or maybe you and I will just sit and have a natter about stuff throughout the season. Absolutely, no, that'd be great. And I did notice that Jeremy followed the podcast the other day. So if Jeremy listens to this, he's on notice. I'm coming after him. So we'll try and have an FFW thing. Just before we leave, do you want to plug the FFW site, Twitter, where can people find you and your excellent work? It's I'm at Rich_Allen85. French Football Weekly is at French FT Weekly, and www.frenchfootballweekly.com. Thank you very much. And as I say, do check out Le 50. It's the 50 sort of players to keep an eye on in the French league. So do have a look at that. It's excellent. Right. Thank you very much, Richard, again. Really appreciate your time. And as I say, we will no doubt speak to you again soon.
Excellent.
And thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. We will, of course, be back with further previews in the coming days, actually, of the Premier League, of the Italian Serie A, and the German Bundesliga. We've got a couple of excellent guests coming on. I think Ross Dunbar from the Bundesliga show is going to come on with myself and Drew to do the German preview. And we're trying to figure out some scheduling for the lovely Mia Rizuki to have a chat with us about the Serie A. And then Tom will be back the week after to preview La Liga. So keep it tuned. We appreciate you listening as always. We've been the Football Hipsters, myself and Rich. We'll speak to you again soon. Thank you very much for your time and enjoy your French season.